Hello there, and welcome to Gooner U, where there are no degrees because the learning never stops. I'm Dove, a TA here at Gooner U, and my friend Keith is our stalwart distinguished professor of Arsenal and football studies. Enter our classroom as we discuss the week's news involving Arsenal, Premier League, Champions League, and international football, all from the perspective of a couple of Americans. This week at midweek, we hosted the Greek club Olympiakos in the Champions League, and then for the weekend, we hosted a London derby against West Ham. Hello, Keith.
Hello, Dove. I hope you're enjoying the seasonally appropriate weather. I'm being facetious. It's like 90 down here still. Not currently. It's dark out. And it's doing that thing where the sun goes down earlier in the day, but it doesn't feel cold at all.
No, not dissimilar. Even up north where I am, we were around 85 today. So it was a hot soccer match for my son on the turf. It probably felt like it was over 90, probably close to 100 for him. So,
ugh, yikes. Well.
Not fun. As his coach said in the post-game talk, everybody was sweating, and Reed was dressed like a pickle in his bright green keeper kit. I've got that top of the table tingle feeling going on, so that's fun for Arsenal's sake.
Yeah, we'll bring that up a little bit, but it's. We're entering a period of the season where we can feel a little bit better about ourselves, having survived the opening gauntlet. And it really was, in a lot of ways, a gauntlet. And I think it's nice to hit a stretch where even if we kind of let our foot off the gas a tiny bit, as we did, I think, at points this week, we are still in good condition to keep racking up points, which at this, we're going to hit that stretch where we really can. We really ought to, I should say.
Yeah, so first, let's talk about one thing that I'm sure is on everyone's mind after this West Ham match, especially the injuries to Ødegaard and Rice that occurred this week. How are they doing? What's the latest from them?
So we'll start with Declan Rice because this is the easier one. Mostly what I know about this is from post-game, Arteta was asked about Rice. And he asked post-game if he was all right. This is from The Athletic, his quote, "Well, he's not because he asked me to come off, so that's a shame. He had pain in his back and he could not carry on, which is something very unusual for Declan, so we'll have to assess him and see how he is." I haven't heard anything else about it. My hope, of course, is that it's not very serious. I mean, he asked to come out, but also it was the point of the game where the game was kind of over. So I don't feel I'm not as concerned about that. On the other hand, we sort of saw with when Madueke came off, right? Obviously that was halftime, it was a little earlier, but it was also about changing the formation or changing the team shape, changing the talent on the field. Of course, that's when Saka came on. So this one's a little different, obviously, but hopefully it's not anything, but we know he came off for that way. We'll see. I hadn't heard anything about him not going with England this break.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully he doesn't have much to do. It doesn't look like their games are that onerous. I think they said they had a friendly and one qualifier, and the qualifier didn't look particularly challenging. So hopefully they can tell themselves that they don't need Declan Rice at this point. It's more important that he, rests and stays healthy and continues a strong club season so he can be strong going into the World Cup next summer. Just
right.
My thoughts to Thomas Tuchel. I take or leave him. Right. So that's it with Rice. Ødegaard is definitely out of Norway for this weekend. It is an MCL injury. It came with a knee-to-knee clash. Was at Somerville of West Ham. Just unfortunate. He tried to play through it a couple of times. You could see he wasn't moving very well. He clearly, I think he knocked the ball out when he finally went out. It was just
right.
It's a frustrating season for him. I think they said that's the third time. Third time in 3 home games he's been subbed off in the first half due to injury, which I think they said is the first time that's ever happened. A player, I forget it. It was like weirdly specific. It was something like subbed off in the first half of 3 consecutive home games.
Right. For an Arsenal player.
Yeah. Whatever it is, it's not good.
No. The first 2 were the shoulder injury, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's been terrifically unlucky this season, which is unfortunate, obviously, which is a shame, really, especially because I thought his performance against Olympiakos was at least the parts I saw, was probably the best he's been all season, and a little bit closer to the Ødegaard we remember from not last year, but the year before, when he was, arguably our player of the season.
His last fully healthy season, right?
Exactly. So I felt like we were maybe starting to get that Ødegaard, and now we won't. And especially with a knee, like with a shoulder, as we said, you don't run with your shoulder. You can kind of there's a lot you can do with that, even if that's not necessarily 100%. But obviously, a knee for a sport with so much running is that's tough. That's
the running, tough. The running and the kicking. Yeah, those are not great for the knee. So the MCL, that I haven't really heard of before. That's just another. It's like the ACL is what everyone talks about, but the MCL is the other main ligament, I guess, in the knee.
Medial collateral ligament, and you're in the left knee. And at that point, you're stretching the bounds of my medical knowledge because I am not that kind of doctor. But it's typically the other one you talk about. ACL is the more common one you see when people talk about injuries. But I've heard MCLs. And there's also a UCL, but I'm pretty sure that's your elbow, and that's like that's like a baseball pitcher's problem, and that's where Tommy John comes in, I believe. So anyway,
right. Yeah, not too many Tommy John surgeries for soccer players.
No, I can't imagine there would be. But we'll see. We don't. At this point, it's all we know is he is out for Norway this break, and we'll see.
Fingers crossed. Hope for a speedy and complete recovery on his part. Across the pond, there's some fun events that have transpired in the MLS, right?
Yeah, so it's trophy season. I guess the way to say it. Playoff berths are being clinched and wrapped up. The regular season has one more week, one more full day, decision day, as they like to call the final day. That will be. They'll also take off the international break. At least most teams will. So the first one, the Philadelphia Union have won the Supporters' Shield, which I believe is the second time in the club's history they've done that. So congrats to them. I'm not going to dwell too much on the fact that it came after beating New York City. I'm not going to be too upset by that. But yeah, Philadelphia wins the Supporters' Shield. That's such a weird conversation in MLS. Is the Supporters' Shield more important than MLS Cup? How should we think about it? It is a regular season trophy. I mean, it's a big deal, I think. Given the unbalanced nature of the schedule, I just feel like it can't measure up to the Cup and this MLS Cup in the same way. I respect it. It's a good trophy to win, but I can't treat it the same way I would treat the Premier League. I just can't.
Mm-hmm. What is the closest analog in the Premier League to the Supporters' Shield?
Well, so the Supporters' Shield is basically just the most points. It's the team that finished at the top of the table. And so you will hear, because like a league trophy, it's a season-long award, basically the team that has the most points, the best record. I don't want to diminish it altogether. I think it's important, and Philadelphia should celebrate having won it. It's a big deal. But I hesitate to sort of say, Philadelphia, if they don't win MLS Cup, they're still not the real champions of the league. There's just a massive imbalance in the schedule that takes place across the leagues, because East and West only play, you play everybody in your conference twice, but that leaves you with a handful of games against a selection of teams from the other conference. And you don't really know the quality. It's so hard to compare the quality of those teams.
Right.
I think there was one season like New York City's cross-conference opponents. It was LAFC and Seattle, and it was just like a murderer's row of teams from the West. That wasn't why they didn't win the Supporters' Shield. They had enough trouble with the Eastern Conference as it was, but still, it's hard to do that. And I don't want to pick on Philadelphia because I don't know their schedule. But if their Western Conference opponents were like Portland, Houston, and St. Louis, well then, okay, that's nice. Good. Congrats on racking up maximum points against three teams you were decidedly better than. I don't know if that was what happened, but it just, to me, the imbalance of the schedule between the East and West or just in general certainly for teams within the same conference, but then also across the league. I mean, if the Western Conference is just deeper than the East, or East is deeper than the West, that's going to benefit a club in the weaker conference potentially. So
right.
Again, there's too many.
I can see where that's a big difference from the Premier League,
right?
Where you have a fewer number of teams that each play each other twice, and it really does mean something at the end of a season. I can see the difference you're talking about there.
Right, it's the most basic calculation possible. You played everybody twice. Whoever had the most points is the best team. Clearly. Again, it's still a big deal. I don't want to diminish it. Philadelphia is going to have home field throughout the playoffs, which is a big deal. But supportership winners have struggled over the years. To do the double is an incredible achievement, and it's been a difficult one. So not one that's happened often. I feel like it's been a while since it actually happened. I'd have to look it up, but
okay.
But still a big deal. It is a big deal as the season comes to an end with one game left. I think all of the Eastern Conference playoff teams have been set. I think the West still has a handful of spots that are still up for grabs. Houston was eliminated last night, that I know. Again, keeping an eye on the locals.
Mm-hmm.
But also this week, midweek, we had the Cups, the National Championship, the Knockout Cups. The U.S. Open Cup was won by Nashville, just up the road from here. They beat Austin in Austin. So congrats to Nashville. And then Vancouver Whitecaps won the Canadian Championship, beating Vancouver FC. And I think that's the third or fourth consecutive Canadian Championship for Vancouver Whitecaps. They're having a heck of a year. Top of the West, we talked about their run to the CONCACAF Champions Cup final. Just a heck of a season for Vancouver Whitecaps. They've added Thomas Müller, the longtime Bayern Munich striker. So they're feeling pretty good up there in the Pacific Northwest. And 4 in a row. I had to look it up. 4 straight Canadian championships for Vancouver.
Wow.
So congrats to the Whitecaps, and they're not. I don't believe they're the top seed in the West, but they're going to finish up near the top, and should be. It'll be really interesting to see how they do in the postseason as well. So, congrats to all those. We could also throw in LA Galaxy, but they lost the Campeones Cup to Toluca, and that's all I know or I can talk about that. Other than it's been a dreadful season for LA Galaxy, who might be the worst team in the league a year after the Cup.
Ouch. Okay.
Yeah. Thank goodness there's no relegation. Am I right?
Right.
Well, if you're the Galaxy, I suppose.
Good for them. So let's talk about this week's Arsenal matches. So we had 2 home matches this week. That was a nice break for them a little bit, I think, from the traveling that they'd had to do the past weeks. But so we had on Wednesday, October 1st, we won 2-0 against Olympiakos. And then yesterday, Saturday, October 4th, 2-0 against West Ham, 2-0 victories.
Yep.
One question that occurred to me watching these at this point, we've had Viktor Gyökeres healthy for all of our games this season, basically. Mm-hmm. We've seen him a lot. How are you feeling about him at this point?
I'll be honest, I'm not upset with the performance so far. Obviously, we talked about this. He was brought in to score goals, and he hasn't had a lot of them. Although he's up near the top of the Premier League table in terms of goals. Obviously,
really,
Erling Haaland is way ahead of everybody. So, we're not talking a golden boot here anytime soon. And it's especially after the City game, there was a little bit of a comparison between the two, which is a bit unfair to nobody thinks Gyökeres is actually as good as Haaland. Let's not pretend he's something other than he is. He's a good striker and a good player. I do think I have to say I've been impressed at how well he's held up physically, in large part because I don't think he was supposed to play every game. I think there were a lot of games, especially arguably against some of the bigger teams like Liverpool, City, where we arguably would have probably wanted to see Kai Havertz instead, because Havertz plays a little bit more the way we want a striker to play, holding the ball, letting things happen around him, sometimes playing back to goal. Gyökeres doesn't do that. He's making runs. He's carving people open. I think he's had an adjustment period as well to the physicality of the Premier League, which is just more so than Portugal. We kind of rolled our eyes a little bit about it, how the fact that he received 0 foul calls last week against Newcastle. But he's adjusting, I think, to the physicality of the league. We'll talk about it a little bit in a moment, but the first goal, Martinelli's goal, I think in a lot of ways against Olympiakos is set up, I think, by Gyökeres basically bullying his way through the Greek defenders, which is that's kind of what I want to see him do. A flat track bully is sometimes used as an insult. I don't know that it is in this case, especially when we consider our recent record against West Ham. So would I like to see more goals? Yeah. Do I think he's been a little snake bit? Also, yes. And I'm pretty happy with how he basically runs out there and plays 90 minutes every game.
Yeah.
Which is really, especially given how many players we've had not been able to do that over the course of the season.
And being the foremost player on the field, like you expect him to take the brunt of their challenges, like Saka very often does. So he's held up well, especially against that. Yeah,
because of the way we play and the position he's playing, and obviously because we do a lot out on the wings, Saka takes a lot of that punishment as well, and he's certainly gotten chopped down a few times throughout the course of the season.
Yeah,
but I guess I look at Gyökeres and I understand people being frustrated at the lack of goals, but like the idea that this is that he's a bust, that this is a failure, I just don't see it. 7 games in, and Thierry Henry didn't have a goal, so I don't. And that worked out okay for him. Like I don't look at this and feel like we can make a final determination on Gyökeres. Right. I think some of this is just modern discourse, and we still hear this with Arsenal, how every game becomes sort of a referendum on Arteta as manager, and it's just I don't know. Let the guy get settled in. He's played what 8 games with us so far, 9 games so far, like. We'll figure it out. Like, it's okay.
Yeah, I guess looking at it for me, the reason that I wanted to bring this up, and before I forget too, I had been noticing that all of the commentators call him Gyökeres with like a Z kind of sound at the end. And I'm always the one who wants to pronounce all the players' names correctly, or at least like as close as we can approximate to the way that they themselves say it. And I believe watching the video of him, like when they interviewed him on the day that he signed and posted that, I believe it's like it's a very soft, it's like Gyökeres, like it's like a softer S instead of a sh sound, which I know we're used to that from a lot of the like Czech players, and or is it Czech or?
He's, I believe, he's Swedish, but I believe of Hungarian.
He's not, but there are a lot. It's a very like Kovacic, like that sh sound at the end of names is very common in soccer. Yeah.
I thought I'd heard a lot. Maybe it's just because the English commentators is on Gyökeres.
Maybe
making the sh sound at the end. That's how I'd go with it.
And I even said it earlier myself, so it's something I'm going to try and pay attention to and remember. But anyway, the reason,
I guess I'll kind of turn it back to you on that. I mean, that's my impression. I haven't been terribly upset. Or how do you feel about it then?
Yeah. So the reason that I was asking about it in the first place is I'm feeling not like totally down on him. I'm not the type of personality to really start a holy war against any one player or team. Like I don't get up in arms about stuff.
You're still new. You'll get there.
Fair. That is totally possible. But generally I'm kind of like a wait and see, like give everyone a chance kind of personality. But what I am noticing a lot is all of the missed chances, like so many times where he's like in the right spot. He's where he needs to be, and his foot just doesn't hit the ball, or he just hits it wide or high. There's a lot of that where when we have someone who we brought in specifically for the purpose of being out front, getting into that dangerous spot, receiving the cross and getting the ball into the goal, it's when he isn't doing that. I acknowledge he is in the right spot where he's doing like probably 3/4 or more of what we want him to do, maybe even let's say 90% of what we want him to do. But that last 10% is key. And I think that's probably why we've had so many of these 1-0, 2-0 type victories still, which, still victories, right? Still happy that it's gone that way. But why it's felt more similar to last season than I would have hoped it would be with him in the lineup so often.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'd sort of throw 2 examples back on that. One is, I feel like we had the same conversation about Havertz when he first showed up 2 years ago, and we talked about how he was constantly getting him in position, and eventually that came good. Now, I say it came good. I know plenty of people who still aren't fans of Kai Havertz and still think who, by the way, was more expensive than Gyökeres, actually.
All right.
So I don't know what to make of that necessarily, but So, there is that adjustment period. I don't think he's quite like with Havertz, as we talked about. I think he's much more of a confidence player. He needs to feel confident. He needs to know that his teammates, his coach, the fans feel confident in him. I think Gyökeres is a little more self-assured, but that's kind of normal for a striker. That's just kind of a personality type. The thing about strikers, though, is that a lot of them get into position a lot, and a lot of them miss a bunch of chances, too. I remember Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang I always thought of him as like in basketball, they talk about a volume shooter. Like a guy who scores a bunch of points, because he takes a ton of shots. And it felt like Aubameyang took a lot of shots, and it felt like he missed a bunch of them. But then you look at the end of the season, he scored a ton of goals, and it's like, well, yeah, because that's what he does. I do agree, there's still a little bit of adjustment. He does feel to be just missing things. But I think some of that is still the adjustment period to joining the team, to finding the position, to the team learning how to play with him as well, because he's not the typical profile of that striker that we would normally see. The other player I would think about as a point of comparison, and let me ask you this, because if we're talking about players brought in for creative technical ability and also for contributing to goals, how do we feel about Eze, who only has one goal to his name, and it came against Port Vale?
Yeah, I guess... he has had other goal contributions is my first thought. He has had multiple assists, and I guess I'm not thinking of him the same way, I guess would be the biggest difference to me, like being more of a midfielder than a striker, like thinking of it that way, playing centrally, but like not the front line. There's kind of like, one level back.
Yeah.
I don't expect him to score as much. I expect him more to do what he's been doing very well. I've been happy with him to a higher degree than he's fulfilling more of what I would like him to at this point than Gyökeres is, So
I do think that's fair, but I also and if we're still having the same conversation about Gyökeres in a month now in Thanksgiving, or if we're still having this conversation, as we get to the mid-December and the holidays, it'll be time to worry a little bit. But I think that's still some time away, especially given if he's able to, because again, as we talked about, and we'll get into this with the West Ham game in particular, the area we have struggled in the last couple seasons is not against the big clubs. Again, Liverpool's win earlier this year was our first defeat against a Big Six club in 24 games or something? At least league games. Where we've struggled and dropped points are to these mid-table teams we should be better than, but we just can't get that goal to break through. West Ham is a perfect example. We dominated them the last two times at the Emirates. We dominated them, but we couldn't get the breakthrough. They scored once, twice on the counter, and they walk out with 3 points. And those are the games that we are not able to finish. Those are the points we're dropping. That's where we need to be better. And so I think if he could do that, I think I almost don't care if he doesn't score against. I honestly almost don't even care if he doesn't score against City, Liverpool, or all of that. But if he racks up goals against the Leeds of the world, and we are able to win games that we had dropped points in before, I'm good with that.
Yeah, I see that.
I'll also add his 3 goals. He is tied for fifth in the league with goals. Now it's a massive tie for fifth, but that list also includes Woltemade from Newcastle, a striker, and Hugo Ekitike of Liverpool, also a striker. So
So he's in the right locus, like he's where you would expect him to be for his cohort.
Yeah, it's not like he's been a complete disaster. Erling Haaland, by the way, has 9 to lead the league, which is just shout out Antoine Semenyo of Bournemouth with 6 in second place. So good job on him. But again, it's a little too early to sit here and say some of these are bad failures, troubles. He has more goals this season than. He has more goals than Sesko for United, and he has more goals than Cole Palmer from Chelsea. So
has he been healthy? I know he was having some issues.
Yeah, I know, but I'm mostly I'm just poking at Chelsea. Is really what it comes. Really, what that's all about.
All right, I won't stop you. Mm-hmm. It actually had me cracking up. I watched the replay later on yesterday after the West Ham match was over. I watched the full replay with my son, who was interested and watched the whole thing with me. And because this wasn't an NBC Sports coverage match, mm-hmm. It was all just kind of whoever the Premier League scraped together for the default feed.
Yeah.
Right. They didn't have a real halftime show. Mm-hmm. So they did what they've done before, where they have they show the highlights from the first half, and then they have just some clips package about some player or event in Premier League history. And they were showing this montage about Frank Lampard.
Oh, yeah.
And I was interested. I was watching it, and my son made me turn it off because he just couldn't stand seeing Chelsea so much. He's apparently he does not like Chelsea, which is not something I knew before, and it's kind of funny to me.
Good lad.
Yeah, so that was funny. I was kind of cracking up, and I obliged him. I skipped past it. But yeah, I guess also thinking about how we've done so far, and especially in these kind of mid-table matches, what also I think is a huge contributing factor. I don't think it's even arguable at this point, is just the depth of the bench that you just see. Like in the Olympiakos match, for instance, we fielded a first-rate lineup against them, and yet still on the bench, Waneri, Dauman, not quite in the league of the others yet, but still someone we wouldn't hesitate to put on, Eze, Timber, Saka, Rice, all sitting on the bench, ready to come on, and some of them did, and and made a big difference when they did. Saka, especially. And
we saw that too a little bit against the Port Vale game. You talk about rotation. And you look at the players that are on there. Christian Norgard is a Premier League veteran. He was he was the captain at Brentford before he got here. Some of the, obviously we know Eze was a critical player in Crystal Palace, winning the league or winning the FA Cup last year. So we're talking about a roster that is full of experienced players. This is how you challenge for 4 trophies. I know we just talked about Ødegaard and what a loss he is. It's a huge loss. But this is how you can challenge in 4 different competitions at once. You think about the Cups, we think about the Champions League, we think about the League. This is how you do it. And it's something. And we're going to have a couple of games where there are going to be a few names this season, I'm sure. There's going to be a few names on the bench where you're like, well, he's just taking up space, isn't he? But, I mean, as long as we aren't doing that when we go into the second leg of a Champions League semifinal, right. Which is kind of a position we were in by the time we got to PSG.
Yeah. So with this week's matches, one question that occurred to me, particularly with West Ham, but it'll be interesting to discuss with you versus Olympiakos also, would be how much of these 2-0 victories was us firing on all cylinders, being a top-of-the-table team in the Premier League like we are at this moment. How much of it is that, and how much of it is West Ham and Olympiakos being not that and faltering and making it easy on us?
I think it's definitely a little bit more the latter. And I should say, let me clarify that. Because I don't think it's that it has nothing to do with us being good. We are very good. We're obviously very good. But I do think we're good to the point where I can't say we walked into these games and we blew their doors off. Like that we completely dominated them start to finish. Everything, game should have been 6-0, one of those. I think in both cases we kind of felt like there were stretches where we just weren't playing. I don't want to say we were playing poorly, but we weren't playing with that same massive intensity, driving intensity. And it is a little different between them. Olympiakos is, we talked about this, is a serious team, has a lot of experience, a lot of championship experience on their roster, a lot of Champions League experience on their roster. And so they've played in a lot of big games. They know how to handle themselves. They aren't going to be overwhelmed by, coming to the Emirates coming to Arsenal Stadium, because you can't call it the Emirates in the Champions League. But that's not going to intimidate them in the way, for example, if even Athletic Bilbao, if they had come in the first time in the Champions League in 10 years. So I think Olympiakos played but I think we're dealing with a team that we're just out-talented, and as long as we were, willing to take their physicality, and that was a physical game, like that, there was a little rough stuff in that game, and I don't think anything, borderline or troublesome or, didn't devolve into a wrestling match. But I think it's a place where we allowed our talent to sort of overwhelm them. And then West Ham, there's a reason West Ham is sitting in relegation spots right now. I think they're more talented than that. I think they are a team that will probably get out of those spots by the time all's said and done. Nuno, who is a good manager, but he's got a lot of work to do there, obviously. But he having just taken over, Graham Potter being fired from there, which was kind of, that was only a matter of time. I think they'll be okay in terms of surviving. There's talent on that roster, but they're in a moment of transition, and they've got a lot of work to do. Certainly more than we have, and so we're in better shape than they are at the moment.
Yeah. No, that's all fair. And yeah, I definitely saw the same myself. And I guess one thing that's potentially a little worrying is that sense that maybe we do take our foot off the gas for long stretches in the middle where we probably shouldn't, at least not until we have the second goal. But
yeah,
we kind of feel lost a little bit until toward the end we've managed to get to the late second goals in all these matches this season. But
right, and I do think some of that's a little contingent. With Olympiakos, I mean, they did create some opportunities in the second half, and some of that is just we're better than Olympiakos, but also they're not a bad team. Like they are gonna. You're not going to take a team like that and then completely run them off the field. Or you can. It could happen, but it's not easy to do, especially for a team that's going to be as defensively sound as they generally are. But I thought we did a good job at least taking much of the game to them. Yeah, they generated a few opportunities. They had the goal called back for offside, and it was offside. So, but, there's a danger in that. I think with West Ham, though, I feel like with West Ham, there's a general sense, especially now in the aftermath of the game, they were really just kind of toothless. They were not. They did not generate a lot of real chances. They did not generate a lot of opportunities. We've talked about sometimes, right, how frustrating it is. It feels like you give up one chance and the other team buries it and all of that. The plus side to only giving up one chance is they have to bury it, and if they don't, that's hard. If they don't, that kind of, that was it. That was your shot. And, I do think I should say more than anything else, we have another gear to our game. I think there's a better level we can achieve that I don't think we saw necessarily this past week, but I think it says a lot about where we are, that we could play a little more reserved, or at least certainly not as going out to winning 6-0, although obviously we would have taken it. I do think it says a lot about where we are, that we could play a game that was functional.
Right.
I think that's what we could say about both of these results. I think the scoreline reflects the game overall. I think it reflects our performance. I thought we were fine.
It's kind of the opposite of rising to the occasion, kind of a lowering to the occasion in a way.
Right. And to be fair, a lot of this is results oriented. If Olympiakos' goal does go in and suddenly we drop points at home 1-1, or if West Ham is able to steal a goal on the counter and that game goes 1-1, obviously there's a little bit of results oriented sentiment there, but I do think we did a good job overall doing that. I will also think about it too. Some of this is our interpretation as fans. We talked about that massive early stretch of the season with all of those games we played and the big time opponents. We played Liverpool, we played City, we were away to Newcastle, away to United. There was a lot of, the Champions League opener. There was a lot of intensity. And now you kind of are like, okay, it's a home game against Olympiakos. We should win this. It's a home game against West Ham. And I know the recent past, I know they've been trouble for us, but no, we're going to be okay. We're going to be fine.
Right. Yeah, that's true. One small question, just observing the Olympiakos crest. I'm always noticing the different stars adorning different teams' crests, and theirs has one large star in the middle and then kind of pairs of smaller stars on either side of it. Do we know which victory or victories or how many those are representing for them?
Yes. So yes, we do actually. So that the big one there is representative of last year when they won the Europa Conference League. So the third level of it, European, but it is the first ever continental title for a Greek club.
Oh, huh.
So that's So they are a Champions League regular. So they're Panathinaikos is the other real big one in Greece, but it's the first time a Greek team has ever won a continental championship. So it's a massive one. They have overall, at least according to their own accounting, they're one of the few clubs that has over 100 trophies in their history, including, where's the number here? They won the Greek League again last year. They've won it. Let's see. I don't get the exact number. They've won more Greek titles than anyone else. They are the dominant side in Greece.
Yeah.
I think the rest of every other club in Greece combined has won 41 league titles, and Olympiakos has won at least 40.
Okay.
See, which, so by the way, the other 4 stars on the crest represent each of them represents 10 league titles. Right. So when they finally,
I thought it might have been something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. When they finally get to 50, they'll probably add a 5th one. Yeah, they've won on 2 separate occasions. They've won 7 titles in a row.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, the people talk about like the farmers leagues and all of that. Like, in Greece, Olympiakos is the clear. Yeah, they've won 48 Super League titles in Greece.
Wow,
that's a lot. Although this one they won last year in 25, which is their first title since 22, so they've been suffering a bit of a drought.
Right.
Yeah, Olympiakos is by far the. Also, apparently, he is their owner is apparently also the. Apparently, he's also the head, the president of the Greek Football League. So.
Oh, of course he is. Okay.
Yes, Vangelis Marinakis. Right. Anyway, yeah. I mean, that's not why they continue to win. They continue to win because they're Olympiakos and they always win. But
well, and if you have a club that's that dominant, I mean, I guess it stands to reason that someone involved with the club would be involved with the league at some level and maybe the top, sure.
Yeah, so they won 48 titles. Panathinaikos has 20, and then AEK Athens, or I'm sure it's pronounced something differently. AEK has 13, and then after that, there's here we go. PAOK has 4, Aris has 3, AEL has 1, and everyone else has 0. So yeah, I mean, again, they've dominated the title.
Yeah,
they've dominated, throughout the history of the league. So.
All right, so we are going to now enter our section of the show where we bask in the goals that we scored this week, because sometimes we don't always make an effort to talk about them specifically. So let's give each of them a minute of discussion or so. So kicking it off with our first Olympiakos goal. This is a really nice one. Ødegaard moves the ball up the field. Gyökeres, as you mentioned, like kind of muscles his way, like tearing through a couple defenders to get the ball forward. It bounces back off the post, and then Martinelli is there to collect and tap it in for the finish. So
it's interesting to watch Martinelli kind of like watch it, to sort of almost like essentially he's trying to you want to be careful in those cases because a little touch can do a lot to the ball. And the last thing you want to do is cost someone a goal because you tapped it the wrong way. So really, credit to Martinelli, first of all, just being in that position. How many times have we seen cases where the ball kind of trickles through and it's only a defender who gets there, the keeper scrambles back and gets it? So,
as a matter of fact, we saw that in our next match of the week.
And so credit to Martinelli for continuing the run, making sure he's in the position so that and basically like following the ball in so that when it taps off the post, he's there to just, give it a little tap into the net. And you'd have liked to see Gyökeres pick up the goal, but Martinelli, another Champions League goal for him, another good performance in the Champions League for him as well.
I don't remember. Does that count as an assist when there's like a bounce off of the post and someone else knocks it in?
I don't know. I don't think so, but I also In hockey, it would. I can say hockey because you're the last player to touch the puck, or the player previously you set up the. I think it does actually count as an assist in that context, but I don't know. Actually.
Right. Yeah, something to follow up on in the future. So the next goal came at the very, very end of that match, in stoppage time, in fact. And this was a Saka goal in unique style, where it was from a decent range, and it manages to get through the keeper's legs, which that shouldn't happen. But
he went 5-hole. That's a good goal. That's a really good goal. I mean, some of that's Saka, right? I mean, if you're the keeper, how many times have you seen a bear on the keeper and curl it far post, or sometimes in those tougher, he was a little more central here, but when he comes in on a bad angle and roofs it. So if you're the keeper, you got to think about all the angles you have to cover. And so then what's the one that's left open where there's the legs? And he hits it hard, it hard, gets it right through him. He's so good, right? I mean, why do we have to critique the keeper on this one? Why can't we just bask in the fact that Saka's amazing? Let's enjoy that.
That's where my mind goes, but you're totally right.
Yeah.
No, he definitely deserves all the credit in the world for that. No, great shot, and it.
But yes, the keeper probably should have done better on that. That's also true.
Better late than never. It's nice to have the second goal. And credit to you on this one for a hard fought victory. We did a short, and we covered this a little bit toward the end of the regular episode last week too. But we had done a short as a preview on match day, talking about what to expect at this Olympiakos match. And you said they're a strong defensive side. You predict a win, but it won't be easy. And that's basically what happened. They didn't make it easy on us. We did dominate overall, but they were there every step of the way. So
yeah, and admittedly, and I say this, I did not actually watch the whole game. So, but for the parts I saw, I thought we played it well in general. Yeah, you'd like a little bit better on the finishing product, but overall we were moving the ball around. We were creating opportunities. I'm not upset about how we played. Yeah, they're a tough team, and so 2 points at home is a good result, and one that was done with a fair lack of drama, all things considered.
Yeah, it was good. So that was it for the Olympiakos goals, and we had to wait for West Ham for the next one. So why don't you walk us through the first West Ham goal?
It probably should have been the one where Eze had the ball at the top of the box, but that's okay. We're not gonna dwell on that. This was another great sequence. Zubimendi has just a fantastic pass through the defender, gets it to Eze, who gets the shot, and credit to Areola, who's I don't have a lot of thoughts on him as a keeper, but some of the guys who are with were like, no, Areola's they rate him pretty well as a good keeper. Made a really good save. But it goes out towards the top of the box, and there was Declan Rice to finish it off. And of course, because he played for West Ham and still has the feelings, you notice the celebration was subdued.
Very classy, yes.
Which, given how much crap they've given him and what he did for them and the way he chose to leave, which was fairly classy, I think he has earned the right to celebrate against those guys. I'm just saying. But
it's enough time has passed.
He won them that Conference League title. They won a European trophy with him. They got $105 million for him. And he did it basically by saying, "Listen, I feel like I've accomplished all I can here. I would like a chance to further my career elsewhere." He wasn't holding them hostage for anything. They had done well in the league. He had come away with they brought them a European trophy. And they got a ton of money for him. So okay. But anyway, he that's how he wants to do it. Declan Rice is a classy guy. He didn't celebrate, but it was 1-0. And frankly, with that game, we talked about the one Eze kind of missed again. Ball bounced around the box. Eze gets the chance and missed it. Right before the half, Calafiori, ricochets off the post, off the keeper's back. It had shades of Emi Martinez versus Villa, almost.
Right. But, it just didn't keep on rolling over the goal line after that. Yeah.
Yeah, and someone was able to get to it. But we kind of flat out dominated them in that game. You had that. What was that stat you were showing me from halftime from the first half?
Well, yeah, it was funny. So the coverage did show there was an overview, and it's funny how they show it with the lines where it'll be shaded in the portion of it that belongs to Arsenal or to West Ham, and possession was like 73-27, right? And shots 15 versus 2, shots on target 4 and none. Expected goals, our XG was like 1.69 in the first half. It was completed passes, we blew them away. Pass accuracy was it was closest, but those are two percentages, so they're 91 versus 77. That's a big difference, but it looks the same on the chart. Touches in opposition box 28 versus 5. Mm-hmm. The funny one to think about is distance covered, and I was trying to think in my mind, how do you look at that and draw meaning from it? So we covered 51.1 kilometers. They covered 48.8. Do you want to cover more distance or less distance? Like, it's a funny thing to look at as a comparative stat.
I'm sure somebody tracks that. I'm sure there's a meaning behind it. That one is a little interesting. Like, they show they show for individual players and how much they run around per game. And obviously you can learn a little bit from there, because it talks about you can see maybe players who run a lower distance are covering less ground, but that means they're generally in a particular area, as opposed to a player who kind of pops up everywhere, like a Calafiore who's suddenly playing right wing for some reason. Well, he's everywhere. Yeah, that's one of those. I feel like it's probably more useful. Excuse me, on an individual level, like looking at a particular player, as opposed to like the collective of the team, which theoretically is going to be like,
on average, like both teams are covering the whole field roughly a similar number of times, I would think. But
I mean, I guess what I'd say is in this game, I guess I would have expected Arsenal's coverage to be a little higher, just because so much of the game was spent in the West Ham end, right?
Yeah.
So, but I don't. Other than basically adding up everyone's particular mileage for the game, which, okay, I don't quite know. Again, I'm sure somewhere will tell me the value. I'm not going to say it has no value, but that does feel a little bit like taking a stat. Why are you showing us the stat? Well, we have it because we can track how far everybody's run.
Basically. Which is about the level of attention that the Premier League gives to this coverage when there is no NBC coverage for the week. That's about what we've come to expect. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but but you look, and this is the Premier League's number. We finished possession 67.9%. XG, we had 2.77. They had 0.49. Which is more than I thought, honestly.
More than it felt like, yeah.
Yeah, they had 4 total shots. It reminded me a little bit of a game a couple of years ago. Again, I want to say it was against Leicester, where we won 1-0. But it was like the biggest blowout you could imagine a 1-0 game. Like, Leicester had something like 0.01 XG, like just completely toothless as opposition. They did absolutely nothing to suggest they might score a goal at some point.
That is really what this West Ham match felt like. I mean, I know you said you mentioned before we recorded that you arrived a few minutes late, and I feel like in you arriving a few minutes late to this match to watch it, that you missed the only threatening performance that West Ham had. Like those first 2 to 3 minutes, they were in our end, they were threatening a little bit, and then it just completely went away.
Yeah, and again, some of this is a little bit in the cold. It's interesting to think about it. Both of these games in the cold light of a day afterwards, or with the 2-0 result in hand. We were able to convert those opportunities. We used our bench a lot in both of these games. And so you can look back and go, they were 2-0 wins. And yeah, there were some nervy moments here and there. But yeah, I'm just checking. We made 5 subs in both games. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there were some nervy moments throughout in those games. But honestly, like, you look back and go, okay, you can think of 1 or 2 times where they maybe threatened to score, but by and large, they didn't. They were games that we kept under control, kept under wraps. I say like we were playing in second gear. I don't know that that's quite fair. I thought we actually played fairly well overall. I feel like we could, if it needed to pick up the intensity, we could have. But by and large, I think Olympiakos 2, the parts I saw, I thought we were doing just fine. We were generating opportunities. We were moving the ball around. We were creating chances. Mm-hmm. Again, we scored so early in that game that the that Martinelli goal was at the 13th minute. So we played most of the game already up. So that changes the dynamic a little bit as well.
And it's like we're using the analogy of gears. I mean, it's like when you're driving, you don't shift into a higher gear than you need for the road that you're on at that time. That doesn't serve you well. So
yeah, and that's too the rotation. That's the style. Like, you don't necessarily want a game where you're going pedal to the metal. You know, at home against West Ham, when you can play like this and win 2-0 and just kind of shrug your shoulders and move on.
Yeah. One thing that was kind of funny, my son was the first one to point it out, but I found myself thinking the same thing too. It was kind of funny with Areola. So not only was he wearing like a highlighter yellow keeper kit, which we've had in the past couple of years, I don't think that's one of them this season. Actually, I really liked the purple kit that Raya was wearing against West Ham yesterday. It was kind of 2 shades of purple. I liked that one, actually. But so he doesn't have, I don't think, the bright yellow one this season, but he's worn that in the past. So between Areola wearing that color and also his number was like 23 and Raya was 22 for so long, I found myself misidentifying him on a couple occasions. It was kind of funny momentarily, and I'd come to reality, but it was kind of funny that way.
I'll say we said 2-0. We haven't mentioned the final one, Saka with a quality penalty. Interesting. It could have been for Gyökeres to take the penalty. We talked about his record, but Saka's playing his 200th game with Arsenal.
Oh, so that factored into him taking it?
I suspect it did a little bit. Apparently, he also revealed post-game that he had gotten that pre-game message from Thierry Henry to remind him that Arsenal had lost the previous 2 home games against West Ham, and therefore they needed to not do that again.
Wow. So not congratulating him on 200 games, but like kind of reminding him you have to win this one?
Well, it was pre-game. Yeah, it was the pre-game. Yeah. But, I think that's a little bit, too. We talk about some of the different nature of the kind of professional athletes and the level of competitiveness they have. Like, you almost kind of want that message. Like, you don't want it. You want the guy to be able to sort of appreciate the moment and all that. But at the same time, like, no, you have a job to do. And that job is scoring a goal and beating these guys and making sure that we get a result that we need.
Yeah, that's true.
Although I have to say, as you look, obviously it was the penalty was there. What did you think of the penalty call?
Well, clearly a foul. No question that it was a foul. I think the mystery around it is whether the foul occurred before or after Timber was over the 18-yard line, I think is the key question here. I don't know how they're supposed to judge that. Like, what it looked like to me was as he's going down, like as the foul occurs, his feet were behind the line, but his body was maybe over the line. Like, I don't know if they're going by the percentage of his body that was over the line. Like, a majority of Jurrien Timber's body was over the line, so that's what made it a foul. I mean, I don't know what they're actually looking at. I mean, it was, as far as in the spirit of the law, right? Like, he was clearly in a position to be dangerous and try and score, which is why the 18-yard box is sized and positioned where it is. If you're in that part of the field, you're a threat to score, and any foul needs to be a penalty, right? Like, I think in keeping with the spirit, it definitely should be. Whether it was on each side of the line, that's... I don't know how they're supposed to judge that. It didn't feel like I would be aggrieved if it were called that way against us. I could see it either way, I guess. What do you make of it?
Well, so we were a bit surprised after review because the fouling action clearly begins outside the box. But notice I didn't say occurs; it begins.
Right.
Because as the post-game reading that I've seen, the post-game commentary has talked about, they do allow for what they call continuation. So basically, because the action and the foul, yes, it is initiated outside the box, but because it continues in the box, therefore it can be seen in that light. I think in a lot of ways, I think we may have benefited from the original call, which was a penalty, and you look at that and go, okay, but I can't overturn the penalty. I don't see anything to guarantee the overturning the penalty because you can justify continuation. Whereas if they had called it a foul outside the box, I don't think you could watch that replay. And I suspect that's a little bit there what was going on, perhaps. But I think also it's it's the continuation that's being called, which is why I believe they ultimately gave the penalty.
Well, yeah, and so I'm rewatching this as we discuss it, and yeah, when they first make contact. And by the way, just a pro tip for anyone on YouTube: if you hit the period and comma keys, they are also, if you hold Shift, that's the greater than less than, so they kind of look like arrows. But those two keys allow you to go frame by frame in YouTube. When the contact begins, no part of his body is yet over the line, but by the time the majority of his body is over the line, they're still in contact. He's still kind of on top of him. By the time he lets go, like his entire body except his, like the toes on his left foot are basically over the line at that point. But his feet were kind of planted behind the line the whole time he went down. Like he went down with his feet stuck there, you know. It was kind of awkward looking. I mean, is it supposed to be where your feet are? Do you know what they're looking at?
I believe that's kind of, I think, actually, I'll be honest, I don't actually quite know the specifics of that. I think, I kind of suspect it's a judgment call in a lot of ways in terms of where the contact occurs. And I imagine that you get a little bit of, I think you get a little. What's the word I'm looking for? I think there's a little bit of the tie goes to the runner. So if you're on the line, it's in the box, versus if you're off the line, it's not. So, I'll be honest, I don't know 100% how that's determined. We'd have to pull out the rules and check.
Everybody, tune in next episode. We'll have some interesting follow up on this and other rule lawyering type topics that have come up today.
It's an international break. We'll have some time on our hands.
Yeah. But yeah, so, you know, as you said, Saka sunk the penalty with style. It was a great shot, and it all worked out for the best. And, you know, I don't think as a West Ham fan they could feel too particularly aggrieved. The match was really not going their way at that point anyway. I don't think that the result ends up any different if that isn't called. But
yeah, I mean, I think West Ham's got a lot of bigger issues on their plate. Just in terms of the overall quality of their season. They do have the worst goal difference in the league at this point. They're currently not very good. Again, I think they will be better. I think there's a better version of West Ham, which makes sense, which is why they fired the manager. I like Nuno as a manager. I think he has his limitations, but I think he's also capable of getting good performances out of lesser talented teams. He's a very good defensive coach. It wouldn't surprise me if later in the season, when we go to the London Stadium, it'll be a much tougher game. But yeah, we're you know, this is the kind of game it was good to go through here, good to kind of come off the high of some of the Newcastle win and some of the more recent results and just get a very professional win.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Put a little pressure on Liverpool.
Put a lot of pressure. You know, they succumb to the pressure, and that's why we're sitting here. I'm going to enjoy it while, you know, hopefully it lasts a long, long time, but I will at least enjoy it for the week or two because it's the international break. Who is your player of the week?
Lots of options in a week where guys were better, you know, where we were outclassing our opponents in a lot of ways. I'm going to go with one of the new gunners, Martin Zubimendi. I thought
interesting choice.
I thought he had a good. I mean, I thought everybody had a pretty good game. At least the parts I saw against Olympiakos, we generated chances. I don't know that he was the best player on the field, but a lot of good performances. And then I think I'm actually going to put a lot of emphasis on the West Ham game. First of all, because he comes in cold off the bench. Because remember, he's not starting. He comes in after Ødegaard's injury. Recall that it's Zubimendi who makes the pass to Eze. Which go watch that pass again that he makes. I mean, my. Oh, wow. Makes that great pass to Eze to help set up the original shot. And then, of course, Rice gets the rebound. But then he also makes the pass to Timber to charge in when he's fouled. May or may not have been outside the box, as we previously discussed, which turns into Saka's penalty. So he arguably has 2 assists on the day, even though we're not going to record them that way, especially coming in cold off the bench. After it was about 20 minutes into the game, half hour into the game was when he came into that one. 30 minutes he comes on. Yep. So, really credit for Zubimendi for that performance. I thought he was really good overall in both games. So congrats to him.
Yeah, definitely a spot-on pass, just looping through the air, landing right at Eze's feet, right where it needed to be. That was really nice. It was a little tough for me this week picking. From the Olympiakos match, Martin Ødegaard was the clear standout. Raya had a couple really nice saves against Olympiakos too that played a role in keeping that from going the other way. He was called on a couple times and rose to the occasion. Marino also had some really good ball movement. Some really nice passes, like you were saying, for Zubimendi. But of the three of them, Marino, Raya, or Ødegaard, none of them really had a significant role in West Ham. I don't think Marino even came on against West Ham, or if he did, it was pretty.
He was
late.
Rice.
Yeah,
he came off for Rice late. Yeah,
yeah. So that was with like 10 minutes left to play. That's right.
Yeah.
He didn't really do anything. Raya, I guess, applause to him for staying awake for the whole West Ham match with 0 shots on goal. Wasn't really asked to do much. And then Ødegaard tragically was subbed off half an hour in. Saka would have been my clear player for the West Ham match. Didn't really call attention to himself. He was subbed in the second half until the stoppage time when he scored the goal. That was great. I didn't really notice him the rest of the match so much. Overall, I'm gonna go with Ødegaard. that is where I landed. His first match performance was great. Just doing all the things that he does, moving the ball around the way that he does, facilitating the strikes when they happen. And I hope that he gets better soon. I want to see him return to that form again in the coming weeks. So rest up during the international break, heal, do what he needs to do. Hopefully no surgery or anything's required. Yeah.
I will say though as well. I mean, I know you're loath to give it to him because he didn't score any goals, but shout out to Gyökeres, who played both entire games.
Yeah, that's true,
and was constantly dangerous in creating opportunities. I'm still picking Zubimendi, but if you're looking for a different choice, we don't want to put ourselves in a position where goals are the only thing that judges this. Although obviously in some ways, the goal kind of caps off what is otherwise a very strong performance in a lot of ways.
Definitely. No, and Gyökeres is a good shout. I mean, I wouldn't rule him out. He is doing, like I said, like 90% of what we want him to be doing. It's just that finishing that hasn't quite been there. So yeah, no, good call. So there really isn't much coming up for next week, is there?
Well, I mean, from an Arsenal perspective, obviously the club is off. It is an international break, so there will be a lot of international friendlies. We've seen some of the rosters float out. Obviously, World Cup qualifying is finished for a couple of the sides we follow. I believe there's still Asian qualifiers. Oh, no, I know the round that we're following for the Asian qualifiers is done. The teams we're following have finished, but I think there are a couple. The next round is still there for the next set of teams. Africa is still ongoing. Europe will still be ongoing. Obviously, we talked about Norway not having Ødegaard. We'll see about England as well. South American qualifying is finished. I imagine North America is playing some games. There's some World Cup qualifiers, plus a lot of friendlies. The U.S. will be playing Ecuador on Friday in Austin. I will not be going out to that one, but, it crossed my mind. But I'll not be doing that. They'll play Friday against Ecuador, and then next Tuesday they will be playing Australia in a game to be held. Hold on. Look where it is. The Australia game is going to be in Colorado. Officially, it's in Commerce, Colorado, at the home of Colorado Rapids. So suburban Denver.
Cool. Thanks for joining us at Gooner U. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can also listen to the podcast version of our show on Apple, Spotify, and some other places. If you're only listening, try watching us on YouTube with a link in the show notes. Your homework today is for our podcast listeners to go to our show, wherever you listen, and rate the show, at least 5 stars, please, and write a review if you could be so kind. You may also award some additional stars in the review if you feel that more than 5 is appropriate, which we would always appreciate too. Let people know you would rate us 10 stars if you could. We record the show using Zencaster. If you'd like to try it out, you can support Gooner U by signing up using the link in the description, which also has links to everything we talked about and our socials. Again, my name is Dove, and you can find me on Twitter at Dove Frankel. With me, as always, is Keith, and you can find him in a pub watching Arsenal matches.
I hope everyone has a safe and happy international break. See you in 2 weeks.